This is what we're doing every single week, where we are evaluating, we're setting our intentions, our goals, our roadmap, our plan. And I've said this before, and I always like to reiterate it. When you think about executing and the execution of that plan, the two things that we have to ask ourselves are, what support do we need, and what accountability, however you spell it, do you need, right? Support and accountability are essential in order to ensure that we're executing on the goal. Now, that can come in the form of coaching, that can come in the form of friendships, mentors. It can come in the form of journaling, apps. There's habit tracking apps that you can use. There's a ton of tools and a ton of resources out there that are available to really ensure that you are executing on the things that you said that you were going to execute. So I just want to know, for those of you all who are on, how many of you all have actually been practicing this weekly rhythm, this weekly practice? Just put it in the chat or unmute yourself if you've been doing it, and maybe you've just been doing it lightly, maybe not fully, but I would love to know. Heather's been doing it great. Anyone else who's actually been doing this every single week or at least a few times? That's the question that I would love to know, if you're actually practicing this. All right, so if you're not practicing it, now's a great time to start, right? It's very important that you actually practice these things, only because, what are we doing here, right? Like, I think sometimes we feel as though knowing what we need to do is actually doing what we need to do, and knowing what we need to do and doing it are not the same thing, right? And you know that. And so, yeah, I might know everything I need to do in order to reach my goal, but if I'm not actually doing it, then what am I doing, right? The knowledge is only going to come back and haunt me. It's going to rise up, and it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to haunt me throughout my life, because I'm not actually applying the knowledge to do the very thing. Now, I don't want to hear anyone's excuses to say, well, I don't have time to do it. You got 15 minutes. I don't care how many kids you got. I don't care how many jobs you got, right? I don't care what's on your plate. Every person has 15 minutes, right? You sit on the toilet and you scroll. How do I know? Because I do that, right? We all do that. You got 15 minutes where you can sit down and you can say, you know what? Let me think about what went well last week, what didn't go well last week, right? What are my intentions for this next week? And this is not to suggest that, something, I don't want this to come across judgmentally. I just want this to come across as a pusher, right? As a coach, my job is to push, right? And sometimes in pushing, you got to call out people's excuses that they're telling themselves. I know for a while, one of the reasons why I didn't do this is because I just wanted to bury my head in the sand. I didn't want to think about my goals. And I didn't want to think about my goals because I felt like, well, I'm not gonna reach them anyway, or I don't have the right systems in place to reach them. Or, yeah, it's great to set a goal on Sunday, but I know come Wednesday, I'm gonna abandon that goal. Very similarly to how we set goals come January, but then we abandon those goals come February. So I totally get that sometimes we don't do the hard work because we know subconsciously we're not going to follow through. So why should I even do it? But somehow I feel like a little dopamine shot, or I get some type of satisfaction from at least knowing what I need to do. And what I want to suggest to you is let's stop telling ourselves that. Let's stop playing that game. Let's stop convincing ourselves that knowing and getting a little dopamine shot because we know what to do and actually doing it are the same thing, because they are not. And I also want to encourage you that you have the ability to accomplish your goals. You have the ability to do the things that God has put in your heart for you to do. You have the ability to do the things that God has put in your heart to do, and to do them well. So I want to encourage you. It will take work, and some of the work is setting aside 10 to 15 minutes every single Sunday to say, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what are my intentions, what are my goals, what's the roadmap, and what do I need to do to execute? The difference between those people who succeed and those people who do not are the people who succeed do consistently what the average person does occasionally. So if you do this once a month, if you do this a couple times a quarter, you would be in that category of average, doing it occasionally. The individuals who live extraordinary, phenomenal lives, who are succeeding at the things that they put their hearts to do, is because they're actually doing it consistently. And so whatever you need to do, if you need to set a reminder for yourself, an alert for yourself, an alarm for yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take 15 minutes. I'm going to time block. Find some time on your calendar where you could do it in the shower, for crying out loud, right? We all take showers, hopefully, and your shower is at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes long. Don't let my wife tell you mine's about 5 minutes long. Like you at least got 5 minutes in the shower where you can do this in the shower, right? And you can just start thinking through, okay, what went well last week? What are my intentions? What are my goals? What's my roadmap? What do I need to do to execute? And you don't have to have 100 goals. Do not have 100 goals for the week. Maybe just have one big goal, 2 or 3 big goals that you're going for this new week. That's all it is required of you, right? So I'm going to get off my soapbox. That's my little pushing moment, right? So feel free to take it as a word of encouragement, and as we go into this new year, to actually start to do the things that we've been talking about every single week. All right. So in light of that, I want to also share with you, as I mentioned in the text, I want to share with you what I believe is a method to ensure that you do reach your goals. Your goals, and I'm going to be very transparent and very pusher-y in this call today. Normally, I don't push this much, but we're starting a new year, and I want to push you all to success and greatness in this new year. Your ability to accomplish your goal, I'm going to put goal over here, is directly connected to how you see yourself. This is where we're going. That there is a direct connection between your goal and your identity. And if there is a goal that you have set for yourself that you have not accomplished, that you have not taken advantage of, that you have not succeeded in, I would make a strong case it's because that goal does not line up with your identity. And so if you want to accomplish your goal, rather than focusing on the goal, the first thing you have to do is you have to focus on your identity. If you're with me, let me see a thumbs up in the chat. Does it make sense? You can give me any type of goal, and I'm not talking about, any goal for that matter. It could be a weight loss goal. It could be a finance goal. It could be a spiritual goal. It could be a relational goal. It could be academic. It could be an academic goal. It could be what else is there? We said finances, a faith, a academic, professional goal. If there's a goal that you set for yourself, and you have not, think back over 2024. Like, let's just do a year in review. What did you say you wanted to do in 2024? What did you actually get done? What haven't you gotten done? And if there's a goal that you haven't accomplished in 2024, I would make a strong case that the reason you haven't accomplished it is because there is a disconnect between your identity and the goal. And so what we have to do going into 2025, y'all, is we have to make sure that whatever goals we set for ourselves, that they are perfectly aligned, or the word I like to use is congruent. I think that's how you spell it. I think it was congruent. Oh, I got too many C's in there. There we go. So when you think about the goals that you set for yourself in 2024, if there's not congruence between how you see yourself and that goal, you won't reach it. It will be an uphill battle because you will be fighting against the story you're telling yourself and the standards you're setting yourself. And so when you think about setting a goal for this new year, I want you to identify whatever that goal might be, but then I want you to zoom out or take a step back. And rather than focusing on the goal, I want you to focus on identity. Now, I've talked about this before, and I'm going to talk about it again today. So your identity is, I don't know if y'all remember this, your identity is the the composite, or it is the combination of the story you tell yourself and the standards you set for yourself. If you say to yourself, your identity, who you are, how you see yourself, it is a composite, it is a combination of the story you tell yourself, story meaning both past, present, and future story you're telling yourself, and the standards you set for yourself. So if there is a goal that you're going for and you have not reached that goal yet, I would say it is because the story you're telling yourself and the standards that you're setting for yourself are not congruent with that goal. And so if we actually want to reach our goal for this new year, we have to first align our story and our standards with whatever that goal is. So you might say, I have a weight loss goal. I want to lose 30 pounds this year. That was me in June, in April, May, January, March, April, May, June, April, May-ish. I was like, man, I'm tired of not feeling my best, right? And so I really want to lose some weight, get myself together. And this is a goal, and I've shared this with you all. This is a goal I've been working on for the last 3-4 years, right? Post-COVID. Been trying to work on this goal. And I had to sit with the story and the standards I was telling myself. And I realized it's not about just losing the 30 pounds, right? It's not about just saving. Let's say you want to save, $20,000, or you want to get a down payment for a house, or you want to transition jobs. It's not about the goal. It's about we'll start with standards. What are the daily practices that you are doing, the standards that you set for yourself that are actually congruent with that goal? So many of you all I know are Christians. And as Christians, I know as a Christian myself that we set a certain standard for ourselves. There's just certain things as Christians, by the grace of God, that we don't want to do, right? That we don't want to engage in because of our faith, because of the standards that we set for ourselves. And it's no different than for you reaching a goal. That when you're striving for a goal, you have to say, what are the standards? What's the floor? Standards this is the floor. What is the baseline that I am not going to fall below? And so for me, I had to say to myself back in June-ish, I had to say to myself, you know what? In order for me to reach my goal of losing 30 pounds, I have to set a standard of counting all of my calories. And that is something that I started doing back in June, of just taking out my MyFitnessPal app. And if I can't count the calories, if there's not a nutrition label attached to the item, then I just can't eat it, right? Because I need to count my calories, because if I'm going to lose weight, I can't just run myself into weight loss with doing marathons and living at the gym 2-3 hours a day. I have to be in a calorie deficit. So the only way to get into a calorie deficit is to count my calories to ensure that I'm not going over 2,100 calories a day. And so I started counting my calories, and that became the new standard that I set for myself, that then allowed me, it was so natural. Once you set a standard, it's inevitable that you're going to reach the goal. And so I want you to really think about whatever goal you have for yourself for this new year. I'm going to make a bold statement, and I want you to test me on it. I want to make a bold statement. Whatever goal you have for this year, you will not reach that goal if your identity isn't congruent with the goal. And the only way to get your identity congruent with the goal is to set standards for how you will show up, what you will engage in, the work that you will do or the work that you won't do, how you see yourself. So now I have to look into the mirror and I have to say to myself, I am someone who counts calories. That is a part of my core identity. That is who I am. You might look at yourself and say, you have a savings goal. I am someone who I do not spend money outside of my budget. That is a part of who I am. That is my identity. I will become known as a saver, right? Or I will become known as a budgeter, or whatever the goal is you're setting for yourself. Your identity, the standard that you set for yourself, it has to align. It has to align. The other piece to this puzzle is the story you're telling yourself. And I would almost go so far to say, I mean, I don't want to make one more important than the other, but between standards and story, I think story might just win out just a little bit, because if the story you're telling yourself, past, present, and future, does not support the standards you're setting for yourself, the standards won't hold. See, this standard, this is a present day standard. But if the story you're telling yourself in the past and the story you're telling yourself in the present are not aligned or congruent or supportive of the standard, then the standard won't hold. You might do it for a couple weeks. You might set a resolution for a couple days, but the standard won't hold. So you have to be willing to say, okay, what is the story of Seth? What is the story of Jason? What is the story of Heather? What is the story of George? What is the story I have been telling myself over the last year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years about this particular goal? And for some of us, the story we have been telling ourselves has not been serving us. We might be telling ourselves a self-limiting, a limiting story, a self-sabotaging story, a story of defeatism, a story of victimhood or victimness, right? We have been telling ourselves a story that has placed ourselves in the position of the victim and not placing ourselves in the position of the creator. And I've dealt with this before. This is kind of like a year in recap, that in your life, the story you tell yourself is either, that's supposed to be a triangle. The story you're telling yourself is either leading you to embrace a victim. Is that how you spell it? A victim mentality or a creator. I would not even say mentality. I would say a victim identity or a creator identity. And when your story is that of a victim, I can't do it unless the reason why I haven't succeeded is because the reason why I can't reach this goal is because this person hasn't done this for me. This person didn't come through for me. This person didn't keep their commitment. And you are placing your future at the feet of someone else's decisions, as opposed to taking ownership of your own decisions and saying, I am the captain of my ship. I'm the one who can decide what I do and what I don't do. And so I am going to tell myself a story about myself that actually serves my future self and will actually reinforce or support the standards I have set for myself. So in order to have these standards that are locked in, you have to begin telling yourself a different story. Now, that doesn't mean you lie to yourself. This is not about lying, right? Because when it comes to you, whether something is a lie or something is a truth is not a matter of fact. It's a matter of perspective, right? I can say to myself, well, looking back at my past, I can say, well, I've always accomplished all my goals. And you might say, well, actually you haven't, right? That's a lie. Okay, you can classify things as lies or as truths, but I don't think that's as helpful as you classifying them as perspective. My perspective on the situation is there have been some significant goals I've accomplished. Yeah, I can look back over my life and I can realize, man, there's I've done some phenomenal things. I have enough evidence over my past 44 years of life to make a strong case for why I can accomplish anything I set my heart to accomplish. There is enough evidence. At the same time, hear me and hear me good. there is also enough evidence over the past 44 years of my life to make a strong case for why I will never accomplish anything of significance. You see what I just did? As I look at my story, I can find successes and I can find failures. And depending on my perspective, not lies or truths, depending on my perspective will determine the story I'm telling myself, which will then inform the standards I set for myself, which will then determine the goals I actually achieve in this new year. So if I was to draw it out a little bit differently, I would almost draw it out like this. I would draw it out like this. I would say the story determines your standards determine your goals. And this here, the relationship here is identity. That's how I draw it out. The story you telling yourself determines the standards you set for yourself. The standards you set for yourself determines the goals that you accomplish. Does this make sense? Y'all with me? Make sense? So then the question becomes, when I am determining my story, I have successes. How do you spell success? Successes, and I have failures in my past. And it's up to me, based off of my perspective, to determine how I interpret the events of my past. Do I interpret them as failures, or do I interpret them as learnings? And so I say to myself, man, I've never failed. I've only learned. Is it true that I've never failed? Who cares? This is my story. Who cares if it's true or not? If I say to myself, Seth, I have never failed, is that true? I don't care whether it's true or not. What I'm more concerned with was, what does that statement do for me today? Does that statement move me forward in faith, belief, hope, love? Or does that statement lead me into discouragement, fear, shame, guilt? So if I say to myself, Seth, you have never failed, then okay, sure. But maybe it's because I'm saying that because I don't see not being successful as a failure. I see it as learnings. So, man, I've never failed. I've only learned. I've learned how to do something. You know, we've talked about this before. The creator, the inventor of Formula 409, right? The reason it's 409 is because he failed 408 times. Well, did he actually fail 408 times, or did he learn 408 times how not to do it, right? It's all about perspective. And that's why I say it's not about whether it's true or lie. It's all about what perspective are you applying to the story of your past that is then going to inform the story of your future, which will then inform the standards you set for yourself, which will then inform the goals you set for yourself and the goals that you achieve. If you try to set big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs, if you try to set big, hairy, audacious goals for 2025, and you don't address your story or your standards, we will be in the exact same place this time next year. You will have a graveyard of unmet, unrealized goals because you didn't do the work of aligning your identity with the goal. And this is the reality that I have experienced. I'm not telling you something I read in a book. I'm telling you something I know for myself. I have experienced this. You will either, this is the reality. You will either bring your goals down to your identity, or you will bring your identity up to your goals. That is gospel truth. Can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, can't we just meet in the middle somewhere? No. You will bring your identity down to, you will bring your goals down to your identity, or you will bring your identity up to your goals. So yes, I want you to set big, hairy, audacious goals. But then I also want you to do the hard work of raising your identity, raising your story, raising your standards to become congruent with that goal. That is what we're working towards. This applies not only to you individually, this applies to organizations, right? This applies to churches, right? Churches that succeed. And, I was a pastor, right, for 15 years, still work with churches, right? Churches that succeed and reach phenomenal goals, it's because they have raised their collective identity up to meet the standard that goal requires. Because this goal does have a level of requirement. It requires a certain standard. It requires a certain level of activity. It requires a standard. If you want to win an NBA championship, there's a standard that you have to meet. If you want to win an NFL championship, there's a standard that you have to meet. If you want to win on the PGA Tour as a golfer, there's a standard that you have to meet. If you want to, win in the realm of finances and savings and really grow your financial legacy, there's a standard that you have to meet. And we see this with lottery winners. Right? They've just won the lottery. I think someone just yesterday, 2 days ago on Friday, someone won like $1.2 billion, I think was a lottery. Right? If that person, God bless them, if they don't raise their identity up to that of a billionaire, all of that money they just inherited will quickly lose. Studies have shown that. So how do you crush your goals in 2025? You crush your goals in 2025 by aligning your identity with those goals. And when you align your identity with those goals, it almost becomes this automatic, inevitable process where you no longer have to even, it's still work, but you're in this state of flow. It's natural. It's congruent. It's not like you're pushing uphill. You are, because what I'm going after is congruent and aligned with who I am. It naturally flows. It naturally flows. And if you don't align your identity with the goal, then it will feel like an uphill battle. You want to run a marathon in 2025. 26 miles? You have to tell yourself, I am a runner. Start telling yourself, I am a runner. In your morning devotion, when you do your affirmations, when you're journaling, start telling yourself, I am a runner. And because I'm a runner, I do things that runners do, which is run. Right? Start buy some running clothes that runners wear. Don't get out there. Like there's this lady, God bless her, in my neighborhood. She's probably not watching. Like she's a runner, but she don't dress like she a runner. She'd be out there in like some low top Vans and like a blouse. And it's hilarious. And I see her, she's out there a couple times a week and she's running in Vans and a blouse. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on in her household, but she don't look like a runner, but in her mind, I guess she's told herself she's a runner, so she's running. And she's out there, she's doing it. But I want to say, start aligning your behavior with that thing that you're actually becoming. I'm a runner, so man, let me go get some running shoes, right? Let me get some of those real short running shorts that runners wear, right? Let me get me a little tank top that runners wear and give me a little fanny pack, right? And a little runner's hat, right? Let me embrace this identity of what it means to be a runner. And as you embrace this identity and you begin to take the steps towards that thing, you will find that reaching the goal of running a marathon, it becomes the next iteration of who you are. It's not even something that is like so otherworldly, but it's just the next step. And so this is the process, y'all. This is the process. I've said this before. Identity drives behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. Identity drives behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. And once you get this circle going, what's inevitable is this behavior will lead to you accomplishing your goals. It's simple, but it's not easy. I don't believe that you can shift your identity, your story, and your standards by yourself. I mean, I don't want to make like a hard and fast. I think you can begin the process, but I think there is a place for community in that raising of the identity. And I've used this model before where, and this is really the vision clarity model, where we've said, okay, in order for you to experience this thing called confidence, right? Right. In order for you to, in fact, let me just get rid of these arrows here, and let's just draw it like I normally draw it. Is just right. So this triangle here, in order for you to experience this shift of identity, and we'll put identity here, that will lead to a goal, GOAL, you need clarity on what it is you're going for. You need community, and then you need God confidence. Right? God confidence really is this idea that, okay, I know who I am, I know who God is, I know what God has called me to do, I know what my gifts are, I know my limiting beliefs, I know my saboteurs, my self-sabotaging beliefs, I know all of those things. I have things in place to account for my sabotaging beliefs, right? For my sabotaging behaviors and those moments where I feel like I want to throw in the towel. Like, I have a system in place to account for that. So I have this level of confidence. At the same time, I'm a part of a community that is reinforcing this new identity, right? That's not reinforcing old stories. That's not telling me or reminding me of the things that I cannot do. I know I'm very clear on not just what I want to do, but even more importantly, I'm clear on why I want to do it. So I'm tapped into my why. Having these elements allows you the grace and the space to shift your identity. If you're not a part of a community, and this is a community, right? Now, obviously, the community that I would want you to be a part of is something where there's a little bit more back and forth, right? This community that when we meet Sunday mornings is really kind of one directional, where I'm talking to you all, and then you all give feedback towards the end, right? But you really need to be a part of a community that is more like multi-directional, right? Bi-directional, where there's conversations back and forth. Maybe it is one-on-one coaching, more a different type of group coaching, small group, family, friends, community. And because you're part of that, your confidence is growing. Now, in light of this journey towards raising your identity will look like this. It's not a journey where you're just like, oh, you just go automatically. It's like, okay, I'm 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back, 5 steps forward, 4 steps back. And you're constantly, because you are constantly trying to renegotiate with yourself your old story. Paul talks about this, not to make, I say this every time. This is not a Bible study. Paul talks about like, the things I want to do, I don't do. And things from a spiritual perspective, right? Things I want to do, I don't do. And those things I don't want to do, I find myself doing, right? There is this flesh and spirit in a spiritual realm that's battling. And in the non-spiritual realm, like with your career, with your health, or with your finances, right? There's also I want to save money, but I also want to buy this new dress. Or I want to save money, but I also want to go on this vacation. And sometimes you might, this month I saved $1,000, but next month, I could have saved $1,000, but I did actually spurge, and I brought that new iPhone for $600, and so I didn't save. So there is this it's a up and down, but ultimately, because you know what you're trying to do, you know why you're trying to do it, you're a part of a community, your confidence is growing, it should be trending up. And I hope that this gives more context to the journey that we're all on. The learning journey. Everything that falls below this red line is not failure. Everything that falls below this red line, learnings. And because you are wise, and because I am wise, we learn. We take the information the data from yesterday's successes and yesterday's learnings, and we apply it to tomorrow. In the professional sports arena, they call this watching game tape. They watch the tape, the best teams, they watch the film, they see what they did well, they see what they didn't do well, and then they make adjustments. The best coaches, during halftime, they are able to make adjustments during halftime so that they can ultimately win the game. And whenever you find yourself regressing to the mean, it's not discouragement. Do not be discouraged by that. Take it as, okay, this is the data point. Why did I do this? What was the context? What was the situation? What was surrounding me? What was the environment? What was my mindset? What led up to that mindset? Okay, boom, I got it. Let me take those learnings and apply them to tomorrow. And tomorrow, I might not apply 100% of them, but if I can apply 10%, tomorrow, and then another 10% the next day, and then the next week another 10%, you'll find yourself raising your average. And over time, I gave them to you, I don't know. And over time, this will begin to shift. And it'll reach your goal. Someone in the chat said the connection between identity and the goals analysis with the arrows was a bit confusing to me. Are the goals going towards the identity and they intersect or intertwine? I'm a visual learner. Okay, so I have so many slides up here. I'm not sure which one you're referring to specifically. The connection between identity and the goals. Are the goals going towards the identity? No. So if you're talking about this slide here, which I think you might be referring to this slide, this picture here is trying to communicate two options that you have. Option one is to raise your identity up to the goal. And if you don't do that, option two, by default, is you will lower your goal. You will lower your goal down to your current identity. So option one is you raise your identity. You raise your identity up to the goal. Option two, which is really the default, is you lower the goal down to the identity. So when you're setting a goal for yourself for this new year, you're either going to raise your identity to meet that goal, or as the year progresses and you realize you're not reaching the goal, you're going to lower the goal to meet your identity. Atomic Habits, and I have it here somewhere, is a phenomenal book that I would highly recommend. If you haven't read it, you put it on your 2025 reading list. It's by James Clear. And one of the most powerful quotes that he says in that book, and in fact, this model right here is in the book, where identity drives behavior, behavior reinforces identity. And he used this model to illustrate, he used this model. This model is based off of individuals who are trying to stop smoking. So like they're going through smoking cessation programs, they're trying to quit smoking. And so what he showed was that the way to help people actually stop smoking is not to just make them stop, but it is to actually shift their identity so that they no longer see themselves as a smoker. Even if you're out there smoking, while you're smoking, tell yourself, I am not a smoker. And studies show that individuals who are able to make the identity shift, even though their behavior doesn't necessarily initially line up with the identity, because they are beginning to reinforce because they're beginning to shift their identity over time, that identity does in fact drive their behavior, which leads them to decrease their amount of smoking to the point where they eliminate smoking altogether. And then as they're eliminating smoking, it reinforces their identity that they are in fact a non-smoker. And so some of this model in particular comes directly from his book. I read it a couple years ago and it was just really blown away by it, is the idea of identity being a strong catalyst for driving behaviors and goals. And the whole idea behind habits, it's called atomic habits. Our habits are, generally speaking, a function of identity. So the reason why you have certain habits, and we can go so far, and I've used this model before, that your identity is the result of cash. You all remember this acronym? So knowledge, attitude, skills, habits. Right? So this is, on some level, individuals who have very salient identities. They have this, well, let me say it like this, that your identity is in part going to be a reflection of how much cash you have, right? So what do you know? The attitude that you have, the attitude / mindset, the skills that you possess, and the habits that you form, right? And so if you want to, again, increase or raise your identity, a part of it also has to do with, okay, what do I need to know? What do I not know about this situation? I want to reach this goal. I want to run a marathon. I want to stop smoking. I want to save money. I want to, lose weight. Like, what do I need to know? Like, what am I missing? And maybe it's not a what I need to know. Maybe it's a who do I need to know, right? And then it's the attitude. What attitude do I need to have? What skills do I need to form, right? What habits must I start? Habits are what we talked about, your standards, right? These are just the things that you do, and you're not going to not do them because it's a habit. It's a standard for you to do it, right? It might start off as a standard, but then it becomes a habit, right? So I say, you know what? I'm going to set a standard of, or maybe it's the reverse. It starts off as a habit and it becomes a standard, where I say, I'm going to start counting calories. And I was doing it, if you eat 3 meals a day and 7 days a week, so that's what, 21 meals. And so of the 21 meals that I had every week, I might have been counting calories for like 15 of them. And it's like, okay, I'm getting into the rhythm, right? First, it just started off with maybe 7 of them, and then it got up to 15. So I'm getting into the rhythm, and now it's up to like 19, probably 19 or 20% of the meals 19 of the meals that I eat, I'm counting calories for, right? And so now it becomes like a habit. I've done it so often, it now just becomes a standard. And now it just becomes a standard, right? And so this is another way of kind of really thinking about raising your identity to actually meet the goal, right? This attitude, mindset, I would say has a lot to do with your story, the story you're telling yourself, right? And I would probably put these two as story and these two as your standards. Yep. So yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can definitely reach out to me. You can go to my website, visionclarityconsulting.com, and you can, as always, I always like to make available to you if you want one-on-one coaching. That's something that I offer. Listen, this has been fun. Have a phenomenal week. I love you. I'm praying for you, and I want you to succeed in this new year. So if there's anything I can do to support you in that journey, do not hesitate to let me know. All right? Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.